Selena Unkwa. All right, now we would be revealing the papers, daily papers this morning. I am not alone. Patricia Gebres is here with me. Hello, Patricia.
Thank you for joining us this morning.
Okay, and our guest that would be helping us analyze the newspaper this morning is Dr. Victor Okai, a political analyst. Hello, good morning, Dr. Victor. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for always coming. Okay, now moving on to the newspaper review, we will be starting with the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. The big headlines on the Daily Trust newspaper says, women, children killed in another Niger tanker explosion. That is the big headlines there on the Daily Trust newspaper. All right, another headline says, ADC Secretariat attacked in Ekiti, Party 6 probe. You get that on page 12 from the Daily Trust newspaper. Also, another headline says, Bauchi creates a 13 new emirate. You get that on page 7. Another headline says, Christian genocide claim in Nigerian falls. Sultan. You get that on page 3 from the Daily Trust newspaper. 17-year-old boy allegedly plucks sister's eyes for ritual. You get that on page 7 from the Daily Trust newspaper. Also, protests, court reminds Namdi Kanu's lawyer brother in prison. You get that in page 6 from the Daily Trust newspaper. Another headline says, acknowledged most powerful tool for just society, Saraki. You get that on page 10 from the Daily Trust newspaper. These are all the headlines on the Daily Trust. Do well to get your paper. Dr. Victor Ohai, I want us to quickly talk about 17-year-old boy allegedly plucks sister's eyes for rituals. You know, this ritual thing, would you want to say it's peer pressure? 17-year-old boy is supposed to be in school, thinking about money for ritual, and now he has plucked his sister's eye. You know, when I saw the video, I was really, it's somehow. What would you have to say about that?
It is sad, obviously. Why at that age, you know, I mean, what kind of money? There are no responsibilities. He's not
Exactly.
married. He's not paying school fees. He's not even responsible for his parents. And so, but I guess it's what we see in the society today where people celebrate, you know, we don't celebrate intellectual prowess anymore. Or we celebrate these days I mean, any form of worship of money. People don't ask questions anymore. And so it's a reason. So you find kids now wanting money by every means possible, and there are no consequences for bad behavior. So that's why it's like, but it's very sad. I mean, it breaks one's heart to hear that such a thing has happened, and I hope it pays dearly for it.
Very sad. Very sad.
Very sad, if you ask me. Very sad. Okay, moving on, we're going to be moving to the Punch newspaper this morning. And the big news there is convention, PDP convention. Lamido Turaki McAfee, lead PDP chairman raise. You can find that in page 2. And then moving on, presidency can clash over Christian genocide claim. Okay, you can also find that in page 26. Niger governor mourns as 35 killed in tanker explosion. We're always having this tanker explosion. You can find that on page 4 and 5. And then we also moving on. Presidential pardon. AGF orders multi-agency probe. You can find that in page 2. And then we move on to DRA delays APC move. Amid Sylvia Lakborihi and power talks. You can find that in page 2. And then moving on, Sanwo-Olu Fashola Ambonde, Lagos APC endorses President Bola Tinubu's re-election. You can find that in page 2 also. But let me quickly ask you, I'm going to be taking the PDP convention. For a moment, you will think that PDP is dead. I'm sorry to use that language. You would just think that, okay, PDP is not put together anymore. And here we see that they are going to be having a convention. Do you think anything good will come out from this convention?
Okay, so truth is that I think that the People's Democratic Party is still, if not the most widely spread, is still one of the, among all the other parties, it's more widely spread, competing only with the APC at the moment, So it's going to be difficult to assume that it is dead. That a few people leave doesn't mean that the party itself is dead. It's just like a tree shedding off its leaves and stems for new ones to emerge. And in a way, it's good for the party as well, because you see, there are dead woods there who have stunted the growth of a lot of people. And so when they move, it creates opportunity for new leaders to emerge. So I think that that's what it is.
And then you think they could give APC, if a good fight in 2027 election?
The truth is, the next election is for APC to win or lose. I'll explain what I mean by that. For it to win or lose depends on what it does. And I'm not talking about manipulating elections, because I think Nigerians are going to come out even stronger this time. But, your performance will determine whether you stay or not. If you are careless, then there's always somebody in the opposition. I mean, it happened to PDP. They thought they would be there forever. And then in a moment of, carelessness, they lost it. So it could happen again,
I think anyway, I'm going to give Mercy the opportunity to go ahead, but let me quickly add this to what you just said. I think you're putting aside the case of rigging.
No, I didn't say. I mentioned it when I started talking. I said, away from manipulation of it or rigging. I said so at the beginning.
Okay.
That, it's there to win or lose. I'm not putting my head. I'm not wrapping my. I want to talk about other things being equal. So all parties will attempt to rig. All parties will do everything possible to gain advantage, obviously.
All right. Moving on, we're still on the newspaper review. Moving to the Vanguard newspaper this morning. The big headlines on the Vanguard newspaper says, court reminds Kanu's lawyer, brother, 10 others in prison. You get that in page 5 from the Vanguard newspaper. A sub-writer says, defendants chanted war songs, police alleged. Another sub-writer says, I'm safe but still in Kujum prison. Ejima Another sub-writer says, we are mimicking democracy. Farutimi. Another sub-writer says, faulty police judiciary. Another one says, action aid, amnesty, condemns all sorts on protesters. Okay, that is for that. Moving on, still on the Vanguard newspaper, another headline says, court nullifies Ebonyi 2024 LG elections, sacks chairman and councillors. You get that on page 37 from the Vanguard newspaper. All right, still on the Vanguard, tanker explosion, over 30 killed in Niger from falling tankers. You get that on page 7 from the Vanguard newspaper. Why governance others are defecting to APC, Governor Sule. You get that on page 9 from the Vanguard newspaper. We will all go after enemies of our sovereignty. You get that on page 8. CDS. You get that on page 8 from the Vanguard newspaper. 73% of rural residents say inflation rate is high, CBN. You get that on page 20 from the Vanguard newspaper. Why Nigeria should not be designated country for concern, Kuka. You get that on page 14. And a sub-writer on this says, can fire back at president, says a Christian genocide real. You get that on page 8 from the Vanguard newspaper. Another headline says 2026 WCQ NFF rolls out plans for Super Eagles playoff. You get that on page 39 from the Vanguard newspaper. Okay, let's quickly talk about the court reminds Kanu's lawyer, brother, 10 others in prison. This protest that has been going on, free Nnamdi Kanu. Let's talk about that, Dr. Victor.
Okay, so what has happened is, and that's the excuse the government is using, that they had obtained court injunctions restraining them, particularly from certain places. And so, of course, this was preemptive in a sense, and that, and also they felt that they had probably gone over and beyond where they were not, they were restricted from, and so they used that as an excuse. But it was always going to happen because if it was the only way to ensure that they can forestall future demonstrations. The government was not going to sit and watch while that demonstration takes place. It doesn't make it right. We have a right to protest.
Yeah.
And why the lawyer should be arrested, I think like every other citizen, he has a right to come out and protest.
Yes.
But I guess that the government obviously is hiding behind the finger of the law, that they had obtained an injunction. And then, like, I think I heard you read there that they said while they were going, they were chanting songs of war.
Yes,
People
they
do
were.
it all the time. That's not an issue. But it has happened. And before I forget, I think there was a very important headline that we may end up not discussing, which is the tanker explosion. I mean, 30, 35 lives is not 30, 35 chickens.
Yes.
So, and the important thing about that story is that, most of the victims were women and children. They were killed in the tanker. They were the first to arrive at the scene. And what caused the explosion was two things. One, the tanker fell over. And why did it fall over? Bad roads. For a newspaper report, it was as a result of bad roads. So the bad roads, obviously, that's what makes tankers fall most times.
Yes,
It wasn't
exactly.
a collision or anything. So it fell as a result of bad roads, which is an indictment again on our federal roads. Two things. Our rail system needs to work. These things should not be ferried on the roads like that. They spoil the road, and not only do they spoil the roads remain bad, and then they end up being victims of the same road, and then create further victims and casualties again from things like what has just happened. And then, like I said, the first people to arrive at the scene were women and children, and they were the ones that were killed.
Yeah.
It is really, really, really sad.
Sad.
And,
Very, very sad.
So.
All right, moving on.
Okay,
Patricia.
let's go to the Daily Times. The major story on Daily Times is defilement of minor. Senate recommends life imprisonment without option on fine. You can find that on page 4. And then we move on to Nigeria far from respite despite 3.17% drop in food prices. This is a report from SBM. You can find that on page 4. And then moving on, we have protest aftermath. Kano's lawyer brother, 10 others remanded in Kuje prison. You can find that in page 2. And then in page 5, you can also find Senate may approve 2% retention of recovery for EFCC. Asks Commission to publish frivolous petitions. And then on page 11, you can find experts fault 712 billion Lagos airport remodeling, warn against hasty execution. And then WhatsApp on page 10, you can find WhatsApp's next big shift. Users' name may replace phone numbers. Let's go to the defilement of minor. The Senate had this yesterday. Just in a quick one, recommended life imprisonment without option of fine. Do you think this is good move?
Okay, so while I think it is, it is a very abominable act and all that, I personally think that life imprisonment may be going too far. The reason I say so is that you might, in the mix of things, especially in the kind of judicial system we have in Nigeria, have innocent people in the mix as well. And so if such a thing happens, then the person remains there. 10 years is very long.
Yeah.
It looks like nothing, but it's a very long time, honestly. I think that something like 10 years, 15 years is bad enough. For rape, I think it's about maybe 14 years or thereabouts, but to say for life, and if the person turns out to be innocent, it's like a death sentence.
Yes.
I think it's extreme.
All right.
And some of the people who are doing this, who are even recommending this thing, defile minors. Minors are people under 18. So it's not just, and the reason I say this, and we have to be very careful, is that you see some 17-year-olds or 16-year-olds who already look like they're 20. And then what happens? And if they set up somebody with somebody of that age, then you go away for life, it doesn't make sense.
All right,
I think we should be reasonable.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Victor Ohai. This is all we've got for you from the dailies this morning. Do well to get all the copies and go through them. Okay, we are still on TMI this beautiful morning. We would be handing over to Benin for the continuation on TMI. Do stay.